If you've been following the show, and thank you very much for that, last week we gave you a list of the PBA's 25 greatest players. That was a list compiled by experts to mark the league's 30th anniversary. That was in the year 2000. But when the PBA turned 40 in 2015, they decided to add 15 more to the previous 25 greatest to make a list of the 40 greatest players of the PBA on its, tada, 40th anniversary. Get it? 40? So the 40 greatest players of all time. They call this latest edition the New 15, but that new list was not without its share of controversy. Question is, why was this list controversial? Let the debates begin here on Basketball Almanac.
There's a dead ball situation now. They can call for a 30-second injury timeout.
Well, sure, you can never argue with stats and trophies. But the question is, how does one really quantify greatness? Especially if the player is still active and history has yet to make a final judgment of his legacy. In the year 2000, the PBA listed its 25 greatest players of all time. In 2015, they added 15 more to that list to commemorate the league's 40th anniversary. But in 2000, with the list of 25 greatest, nobody really argued with it. But in 2015, howls and eyebrows were raised. The question is, why?
April 8, 2015, the PBA reached yet another milestone, celebrating its 40th year. And to mark 4 decades, Asia's pioneer basketball league saw it fit to induct 15 more names to its 25 greatest players of all time.
They thought that what could be better than just adding to their already standing list of 25 greatest, adding 15 para mas maganda yung number at 40. So that is where the idea came about.
And just like with the first 25, the PBA formed a search committee. The panel was composed of PBA legends Robert Jaworski and Freddie Webb, PBA Chairman Patrick Gregorio, and Vice Chairman Robert Non, PBA Press Corps President Barry Pascua, columnist and commentator Quinito Henson, and Cavite Representative Elpidio Barzaga. The candidates profiled by the committee all played in the PBA from the year 2000 to 2015 and were screened based on the same criteria used for the first 25. The honoree should have played 5 full seasons, he must be a recipient of a major award, and must have made an impact on the sport. The new 15 was then revealed during the league's Fab at 40 celebration. In the illustrious list were former 2-time PBA MVPs Willie Miller, Danny Ildefonso, and James Yap. Former PBA MVPs Asi Taulava, Eric Menk, Jimmy Alapag, Kelly Williams, JJ Helterbrand, Mark Aguiwa, and Arvin Santos. Gilas Pilipinas mainstays Mark Pingris and Jason Castro, and retired players Chito Loizaga, Marlo Aquino, and Kirby Raimundo.
I would think Danny Ildefonso was actually the biggest name added here, being a 2-time MVP, along with James Yap. Probably the 2 most deserving to be part of that next list among the players mentioned in the next 15. Those 2 really had an impact on the game. Danny Ildefonso was probably the best big man of his generation, and James Yap revolutionized shooting in his prime.
Compared to the PBA's first 25, which was composed mostly of all Filipino greats, the new 15 included a number of Filipino-American players. Their inclusion serves as a testament to their impact and contribution to Philippine basketball.
I think it's all about the timing, because after the first 25 greatest PBA players, dun biglang dumating yung mga Phil foreigners. Asi Taulava, of course, one of them. And they really changed the game. The Philippine brand of basketball had to evolve because of the arrival of the Filipino foreigners. And kaya naman sila napasok dito is
the PBA is just acknowledging also yung kanilang mga nadagdag, kanilang mga natulong sa liga.
Si Taulava, Eric Menk, Jimmy Alapag, Mark Agiwa, and JJ Helterbrand, Kelly Williams, despite the fact that they're field foreigners, they were legitimate MVPs of the league and they deserve to be on that list.
The new 15 list, however, had some, let's say, problems. What was supposed to be an occasion to honor Philippine basketball's best instead drew flack, raised eyebrows, and ignited controversy. Some questioned its timing and the omission of supposedly more deserving names.
I didn't see the logic of naming an extra 15 players into the list. Parang pinilit na lang. Why? I could surmise a lot of reasons. Pero siguro one of the things is that it was during Commissioner Chito Salud's time. And I believe he felt obligated that he, before he leaves the Commissioner's office, that he comes up with his own list of 15 players to be added into the list.
Well, you know, the new 15, I'm sure there was a process that went through it, but it's like the 10-point must system in boxing. It's something that you really can't explain, but I'm sure there was a lot of thought that went into it. I mean, if you look at the NBA's 50 greatest players, a lot of people were surprised that Shaquille O'Neal, entering his 5th year in the league, was already included in the 50 greatest.
Basketball historian Jay Mercado was one of the vocal critics of the PBA's new 15. At the crux of his protest was the subjective nature of the selection process and the inclusion of active players. It even left out retired players who should have been in the first 25 list.
Let's put it this way, no? Those who were named in the next 15, no, were all great players themselves, no. But you have to understand that there are a lot of names out there, no, that can be selected from. It just so happened na itong 15 were selected, 10 of which, rather, were because of the default criteria. All of them won MVP awards. So that left with 5 players. Okay? Yung 5 players na yon na hindi MVP winners, no, doon medyo nagkaroon ng controversy, I believe.
Mercado also argues that having won an MVP award doesn't necessarily equate to greatness. After all, one can have a good conference, but who knows about the rest of his career? What if that one MVP trophy was really just a fluke? Unlike retired players whose careers we could appraise from beginning, middle to end, your stories are narratives already frozen in stone.
I guess from the get-go, I do not believe in the principle of having an MVP winner getting an automatic slot in the list. In my opinion, mali na siya from the first 25 pa lang. Why? Because a player can have one great year and that could be his MVP year, but the rest were just average years. If you include active players in the list already, what will happen is that yung mga deserving players of the past, lulubog yan sa ilalim.
It is true that winning a trophy may be at the heart of an athlete's career, but for sportscaster Noel Zarate, greatness could be defined as the player's contribution and impact on the league.
If you go back to the original 25, actually, there were also a few non-MVPs on that list, namely Jojo Lastimosa, you had Samboy Lim, Hector Calma, Jericho Diniera, Ronnie Magsanok. They all made the list. They were non-MVPs. And again, it's probably the impact that they had on the league. I would think Jericho Diniera is one of the best big men of at least his generation. And he was called the defense minister for a reason. Same thing with Ronnie Magsanok earning the title of the point laureate. Samboy Lim, of course, the Skywalker. I mean, these people had a big influence on the generation that they represented. For the next 15, I would think guys like Kirby Raimundo, Chito Loizaga, personified defense, and Mark Pingris, Jason Castro, these are non-MVPs as well that have made it to the list. But again, it is their influence on this generation. So I think there's some merit in including them in the final 15.
Asito Olava, one of the latest additions to the PBA's list of greatest players, once offered to give up his spot for Nelson Asaytono. The ageless rock was automatically included in the new 15 for winning the 2003 MVP award. But in one interview, Taulava said he felt the Bull deserved it more. He even said, "I can feel his pain." Taulava had such high regard for Asaytono's game that he admitted to copying his turnaround, one-handers, and hard drives before. But his virtual pitch to put the league's 4th all-time leading scorer in the list instead of him obviously did not happen.
Okay, so let's admit, in the first 25, some people felt there were just some glaring omissions. Like, good lord, can you believe Abby King? Just to name one. That is why it was so hard to imagine the new 15 without some of the league's veterans who were left out from the original 25. Okay, let's say some of the young guys really deserve to be called great, even at that point in their career. But a lot of people ask, are some names actually more deserving than the likes of, let's say, Nelson Aceitono or Danny Siegel? Just two names who are not on the list of the next 15.
The omission of some notable names from the new 15 did not sit well for a lot of PBA fans. No doubt, the new 15 deserved the honor, but the tribute opened a can of worms, with the league's loyal followers questioning the integrity and reasoning of the selection committee.
I think more than anything, yung tanong ng marami is bakit nabigyan na ng spots yung mga players na naglalaro pa. We're talking about Mark Pingris and Jason Castro. Na silang dalawa, nagulat din naman dun sa inclusion nila because, they're still playing. That was one of the biggest questions. Kasi dahil 40 greatest, people were kind of hoping na mabigyan ng tamang parangal yung mga players na nag-retire na. When you talk about Jason Castro and Mark Pingris, surely they will be, in the greatest list someday if hindi sila nasali dun sa next 15. But, that is how it is. Kasi botohan yung naging basehan.
What could have been more mind-boggling than the snubbing of more deserving players like Jeffrey Carriazo, Abby King, Bong Hawkins, among others. But for the fans, the biggest snubs were Danny Siegel and Nelson Aceitono.
Well, if you take a look at it, Nelson Aceitono could have won an MVP. He was a close second to Alvin Patrimonio in one of his MVPs. And Danny Siegel is a four-time finals MVP. So hindi mo matatawaran yung mga bagay na ginawa nitong si Danny Siegel in the PBA. What's interesting about Danny Siegel's case is that hindi talaga siya naghabol ng individual honors. He did not gun for winning best players of the conference or MVPs. All that was important to him was winning championships.
With 7 championships, 4 finals most valuable player awards, 2 best players of the conference plums, and 3 mythical 5 selections, Danny Siegel could have easily made the new 15. Even Siegel's teammate and new 15 member, Daniel Defonso, was surprised at this non-inclusion. The 6-foot Wagner University standout who burst into the scene in 1999 quickly made an impact, but by helping the San Miguel Beermen win championships in just his first season alone. Siegel also nearly became the second rookie since Benji Paras to win the MVP.
Siegel brought in so much. In other words, if A-King revolutionized the number 4 position, Danny Siegel revolutionized the number 3 position. Why? For the first time, we were seeing a 6'7" player scoring from the outside and playing the number 3 position, the small forward position. In 2000 and 2001, he could have easily won the MVP award as well. Medyo naging controversial lang ng konti. Why? Because at that time, there was the Phil Sham issue. So, siguro, naging collateral damage rin si Danny Siegel.
Danny Siegel has gone on the record to express his disappointment. Dynamite Danny felt that he had accomplished enough to warrant a slot in the league's finest. He, however, still conveyed his support to the selection committee, the PBA, and the players who joined the illustrious list, saying that the last thing he wants is to cast a shadow on the top 40 players of the league and that his inclusion does not negate his 18-year basketball career.
I think Danny Siegel is one of the 2, maybe 3 best small forwards ever in the history of the PBA, and rightly dapat makasama siya sa greatest list. Maybe if it's not in the top 40, maybe in the next 50.
Another big snub from the new 15 is 70-year veteran Nelson Aceitono. The Bull, however, wasn't new to being snubbed by the Pro League, having been excluded from the first 25 list as well. Aceitono himself has been very vocal about his exclusion, calling it, a lot of bull. Get it? Oh well. Even questioning the selection committee's decision and daring them to actually look at his numbers.
It was really Nelson Aceitono who was, in other words, who carried the team. What he did was very simple. He slowed the game down and made Aceitono the fulcrum of his offense. No? So lahat ng plays, halos lahat nag-emanate kay Nelson Asaiton. And he was averaging monster numbers at that time, scoring easily 40, 30 points a game, averaging 12 rebounds, etc.
Basing on statistics alone, the Bull really stood out. The former University of Manila star is 5th in the PBA all-time scoring list with 12,268 total points behind only Ramon Fernandez, Abit Gidaben, Alvin Patrimonio, and Atoy Ko. Asaytono is the only member of the top 14 all-time scorers in the PBA who is not included in the 25 greatest list. The Bull is also number 4 in career free throws made with 2,999, 11th in the overall rebounding list with 4,469 boards, and 9th overall in most games played at 820. Clearly, his numbers don't lie, but experts believe that his exclusion was brought about by his attitude off the court.
Now, Nelson Asaytono, gaudy numbers, good stats, won championships. However, is not considered among the greatest because probably of his off-court stuff as well. You know, you consider being an ambassador of the PBA, being among the 40 greatest players of the PBA.
Critics of the New 15 also pointed out the connection of some selection committee members to established PBA teams. But was there really a bias towards a particular block?
I don't think so. Because if you take a look at the list, I don't think there was one group that really got the advantage if you're talking about SMC versus MVP. Hindi naman lahat panig sa SMC, hindi naman lahat panig sa MVP yung mga nadagdag. So, I don't think that there was partiality in terms of like block voting na kailangan karamihan SMC or kailangan karamihan MVP yung napasok because there was a combination of both.
I don't know about the question about being impartial or partial to some players, but that's a pretty solid list of people who are, tasked to do a very, very difficult job. So I'm sure they had their process, but again, it's like a 10-point mass system. They have their own criteria for grading. Some of these players actually did deserve to be in there, and although there were some questionable names, we're not really privy about the process. But overall, that was a very difficult choice.
Cavite Representative Elpidio Barzaga was the only active government official in the selection committee that picked the New 15. He was included in the committee by virtue of being the chairman of the House Committee on Sports and Amusement. The PBA even described him as an avid follower of the league, even during its Mika incarnations. Its Mika days. Barzaga once threw flack among PBA fans for urging the Games and Amusement Board to revoke the playing licenses of Greg Slaughter and Marshall Lasseter for allegedly refusing to play for Gilas Pilipinas in the FIBA World Cup and Asian Games.
In basketball, the best players always leave behind glittering stat lines. But there are cases when the numbers hardly mattered. And that's exactly what happened in the selection of the next 15.
The announcement of the New 15 was met with more questions than a bar examiner. Did the panel members go over the careers of the shortlisted candidates one by one? Did they seek out the consensus of fans? Did they even bother looking at the numbers at all? Granting that any greatest list is subjective, critics of the New 15 believe that looking at stats would have helped the committee arrive at a more sound judgment. For the sake of argument, we compared the numbers of those who were bypassed with those of the New 15's last 5 inductees, namely Jason Castro, Mark Pingris, Chito Loizaga, Kirby Raimundo, and Marlo Aquino. And the difference we found is really staggering.
I won't say naman totally mali. Let me be very clear about it. What I'm saying is that I feel that you crunch in the numbers, you put in the comparison, statistics, number of championships, etc., etc. You know that King, Tuadles, Asaytono, and Seagull would have been more deserving. It's that easy. We don't even have to question that. No, I do not question the greatness of Marlo Aquino and Kirby Raimundo. But just like Abe King and Arnie Tuadles, who were snubbed in the first 25, I felt that they would have been snubbed, should have been snubbed in the next 15, and would have merited consideration na siguro in the next 10. I'm not saying that they do not deserve to be there. What I'm saying is that there are others who deserve more than them at this time.
Even Gilas mainstays Jason Castro and Mark Pingris were shocked with their inclusion in the New 15. The question is, why were they rushed into the greatest list ahead of their more celebrated predecessors like Olsen Rosella and Bong Hawkins? Let's look at the records for comparison's sake. Jason Castro has won 2 finals MVP, while Olsen Rosella has 0. Castro had, at that time, 5 championships, while Rosella had 10. And in terms of points, assists, and rebounds, Rosella leads over Castro. Same goes with forwards Bong Hawkins and Mark Pingris. Both are Grand Slam winners and mainstays of the PBA Finals, with Pingris having won 2 Finals MVP titles over Hawkins' 1. Hawkins, however, beats Pingris in terms of points, rebounds, steals, and assists.
Tough to say, because one, you can look at the numbers or you can take a look at the result of the numbers. Again, it's subjective. It's a very contentious case. Should it be numbers-based? I think so. Doon sinusukat yung kakayahan ng mga players kung ano yung natulong nila sa kanilang mga koponan.
The stats will always be a major factor. I will never discount that because no matter what you say, tama ka, the numbers won't lie. The difference is that numbers are not alone. It should not be considered as the sole basis. Now, why do I say that it's not stats alone? You have to understand the impact of the game. Who were the players, who were the personalities responsible for making the PBA such a huge success? I felt that the PBA deserved, or I should have at least looked into that consideration.
Controversy and resentment. These were the buzzwords that met the PBA's U15 at that time. But it's 2018. Everything now should be water under the bridge. Whether be it the snobbery of more worthy names, the lack of consensus from fans, or the total disregard of numbers and quantifiable contributions. So looking forward to the league's 50th anniversary in 2025, how can the PBA improve its selection process? And more importantly, who are the names that should be in that golden list?
When you talk about the next 10, you have to start the process early. Start, listing down names who will be viable for the next 10. You have to include Junmar Fajardo. How can you not? I mean, 4-time MVP. But sana hindi natin makalimutan yung mga players who were not included in the top 40. Like Danny Siegel, as I mentioned, Jeffrey Carriazo, Nelson Asaytono, Arnie Tuadles, napakaraming magagaling na manlalaro na tumulong palakihin yung PBA to what it is today. They have to be given their proper commendation.
Nowadays, with the advent of social media, even us old folks actually have social media also. So it's easier now to reach a bigger array of people. And I believe that the selection committee will actually open up the doors to the netizens, just to get their vote across. And the names that I'm thinking, of course, you bring in the next 25. That's got to be Junmar Fajardo, automatic. He's going to be number 1 on that list to bring in. We did mention some of the snubs. Probably it's going to be their time.
In the year 2025, the PBA will add 10 more to the list of the 40 greatest to mark its 50th year. Now, who do you think will make it to the next 10 to complete the league's 50 greatest players of all time? But the bigger question is, will it be hounded by controversy again? Well, whatever happens, there's always room for healthy debate and an even bigger room for beer. My name is Lourdes Vera, and this has been Basketball Almanac. Cheers!